Hi friends, I'm Scott Giles and welcome to Power Talk, my podcast here on Facebook Live and YouTube. I cover topics related to spirituality, hypnotic coaching, and the hypnotic arts and sciences generally. If you'd like to know more about my professional work or sign up for my free e-newsletter Power Lines, check out my website, which I'll tag at the end of this video. Well, there is a new movie in theaters titled Civil War, written and directed by Alex Garland. It is a dystopian movie predicting a bad future, where a civil war has broken out in America, and the movie follows three photojournalists who are on the way to Washington, D.C., hoping to interview the President of the United States. Now, the movie doesn't just give you a narrative explaining what's happened. You have to kind of piece that together for yourself. The president in question is a really problematic figure. He makes bombastic claims on the media. He has awarded himself an unconstitutional third term and disbanded the FBI. He is also said to arrest and even execute journalists who write anything unflattering about him. He is actually the president of the loyalist states that claim to represent the historical United States. Opposing the loyalist states are the Florida Alliance, a group of southern states headed by Florida. Also, the New People's Army in the Northwest, about which little is actually said, and the Western Forces, a powerful alliance of secessionist states headed by the unlikely union of California and Texas. Now, I will not spoil the movie by telling you what happens, but I found the movie thoughtful. I appreciated that there was no heavy-handed narrative that took a particular political position. It is not anti-Trump, nor is it anti-woke. The war is not between red states versus blue states. If anything, it appears more like a race war than anything else. Instead, the reporters are embedded with Western forces and loyalist paramilitary fighters, so both sides. Now you have to know a bit to follow that because the paramilitary fighters were all wearing Hawaiian shirts. And to get that, you need to know that a known actual paramilitary group called the Boogaloo Boys use Hawaiian shirts as a uniform. Now, I recommend that you go see this movie, cautioning that it's not a happy movie. It will probably be a bit upsetting. And that's why I think you should see it. Because the writer and director made it with one obvious message. And that message is, yes, it could happen here. And I believe that's a message we all need to reflect on. Now, let me be clear. While I am deeply concerned about the political state of our nation, I do not believe that we are headed for an actual civil war, despite the extremist claims made by some people. An actual civil war requires what you see in the movie: massed armies, air support, logistics, supply trains, centralized command and control, and none of these things exist in our present situation. A client of mine recently called to my attention a book I'd read a long time ago. It's titled The True Believer: Thoughts on the Nature of Mass Movements, published in 1951 by Eric Hoffer. It's a book that has been much studied by political scientists and has actually gone through 23 editions. Hoffer attempts to explain how massive political movements arise and then pass away. They begin with the emergence of a large group of people who want change. They may not be clear on what they want, and there may be internal contradictions among them, but they're clear they don't like what exists. They will eventually be led by a person of words or someone who has a plausible narrative about what is going wrong, that there is someone or something to blame. Now, often this results, at least for a while, in a self-destructive or fanatical movement. Hoffer's point is that all mass movements are, to some degree, interchangeable because they all get started with people who agree on one thing. They don't like the status quo. For example, prior to World War II, both the Nazi and communist movements had many similarities in their appeal, even though they advocated for very different goals. Now, after the person of ideas has come forward and energized the mob and a massive uprising has occurred, there comes the practical person of action. This is someone who unites people into a movement around the philosophical ideas articulated by the person of words, but this individual of practical power institutionalizes the energy of the mass movement and begins to tame it, to re-establish a new status quo. As this part of the mass movement grows, the power of that movement normalizes and it becomes the establishment. Without this essential step, a mass movement dies rather than becoming the norm. For example, people in the Weimar Republic of Germany between the end of the First World War and the start of the Second World War were unhappy with the state of their country. Rampant inflation, political corruption, and so on. They weren't sure which way to go, Nazism or communism, but Hitler came along as the person of ideas and was able to point to someone to blame the problems on, the Jewish community largely, and to advocate a solution, racial purity. He energized the nation, but no person of practical action came in his wake, and as a result, his movement faltered and died. We look at China. The person who captured the ideas was Mao Zedong. Building on the philosophy of the political philosopher Karl Marx, he energized the nation. But as he receded, other people of practical wisdom came forward, such as the current leadership, Chairman Xi, who has tried to create a new status quo, institutionalizing that movement. Now, I'm not advocating for that movement by any means, but that's the pattern. This happened in America. The person of ideas came forward, no taxation without representation. We will not live under the thumb of British rule. But then what happened was people like Thomas Jefferson came along, Alexander Hamilton, who institutionalized the call to revolution, and we ended up with a constitutional government. Well, I believe that a philosophical person in today's world needs to be reflecting on this, because we are clearly in a time of political and social change, and the nature of what is to come is not yet clear. But we do see polarized camps expressing dissatisfaction with the status quo, and each brings an almost identical passion to that expression. But what will happen next? Will we as a society find a way to harness that passion and institutionalize it to something that can last and hopefully improve the status quo? We don't know. but we're going to have a better outcome if we're aware of what is taking place rather than just feeling ourselves to be caught up in something that we have no idea how to think about or how to live within. And I don't have an answer to these questions, but as philosophers are fond of doing, I am absolutely certain that we will all benefit from reflecting on the matter. And that movie will help you get started. So thank you for your time and attention today. I'll be back next week with another talk on a different subject. You are invited. It does help me if you let others know about my work and my videos, so please like, share, and subscribe. And if I can be of help to you, feel free to reach out through email, my website, or my Patreon channel. Have a great week and go to the movies.